Welcome to another episode of the Top Form Podcast, World Music Views, and we have another interesting guest this time around. This is the third season, no other than Stephen Price. Stephen Price is the CEO of Cable and Wireless Flow, and we're going to talk to him about everything from music, technology, what technology has done for Jamaica, what technology is doing for Jamaica. So without much further ado, help me welcome Stephen Price. Stephen, no touching, so we can't have a thing. We can't have a social distance. Stephen, tell us, for those who don't know, what your background is in telecoms and in marketing.
I think for me, I started in telecoms back in probably '96 when this was actually TOJ back in the day, right? I stayed here for several years. Helped actually build the first actual call center in Jamaica back in about, let's say, 99, 2000. In 2000, I left to help start up my competitor. I was ID number 12 actually, so I was the 12th local person to work over there. And I stayed there for a couple of years, and I went around the Caribbean to help launch their markets in St. Lucia, St. Vincent, in Barbados. I came back to Jamaica, stuck around for a while, and then I left and I went to work with Cricket World Cup. I was a commercial director for Cricket World Cup.
Whoa. Pause a second. Yeah. I was the Cricket World Cup mascot.
Are you serious?
I was Mellow.
You were Mellow?
At that time, Chris Daring was the chairman.
Chris would have been my boss at the time.
And Brian was the head of the committee.
Exactly.
So
from a licensing and merchandising perspective, I was on part of the committee that helped to design actual mascot and everything.
Wow.
So you can see that. Anyway, so did that up to 2007, and then went back into telecoms, went back to my competitor for a couple of years, and then I left and I came here to back to Cable and Wireless, and have been here since. I came back initially as the marketing director, and moved into retail to really restructure the entire retail sales and distribution. And since going over there, working with Gary Sinclair, we started to claw back market share from our competition and just made Cable and Wireless at the time a real force to be reckoned with. And then merger happened, we continued to grow, and the opportunity came around 2 years ago, and I am now running the operations here in Jamaica.
So let's retract. Let's go back to '96.
Yeah, man.
What was the technology being used for telecoms in '96?
I'd say in '96 we were just still using TDMA phones.
That's 1G.
Yeah, much 1G if you want to call it. It's not even anything on the GSM arena. It was just straight TDMA.
Could we text? 96?
You could text in '96, right?
But it probably took a while.
It took a while. Took quite a while, right? So back in '96, it wasn't until I'd say 2000 when digital came into the space at the time, where actually GSM came into being, right? And it was the first of the 2G technologies themselves. After that, Cable and Wireless had come out.
So to clarify, TDMA is 1G?
Not necessarily. It is a form of 1G, but it's not first generation technology. The second generation technologies came with GSM. Right?
Tell us the differences between both.
It would be a total speed difference.
Okay.
You're talking about very few bytes from that perspective. It was just very text based. Then you went into PRS once you went into the GSM space. You went into MMS and continued to improve on the data rates until you hit 3G. Right? And 3G was just revolutionary.
What year did 3G reach Jamaica and the Caribbean?
3G probably got to the Caribbean, I'd say, in 2004, 2005, thereabouts, I'd say. About then, and continued to evolve and increase in speeds, etc. Up until LTE started to take the space in terms of fourth generation technology. I'd say we launched LTE. 4G would have been around, but LTE came in about 3 years ago. 3 years ago in the market.
Like 2017.
Yeah, well, 2017. And no, you're talking about LTE Advanced, right? I mean, because that's what our network is built on right now in terms of covering Jamaica 95% of the population with LTE Advanced in terms of getting some awesome speeds down.
How quickly are you seeing the breakout of internet use in Jamaica, and what kind of numbers
No man,
do we have now?
it's incredible. Let's say I will give you an understanding of on the mobile side. Last year alone, we had a 275% between January and December, a 275% increase in data traffic on the network. Incredible growth.
This is beyond what's happening in other territories.
Beyond what's happening in other territories. And part of it is, yes, there's a literacy challenge, there's an affordability challenge. I mean, we have poverty in this country, which is a real thing. But on the perspective of really just looking at it, people started now to adopt it. And what we did was we found the sweet spot for the country in terms of looking at the Swift apps. We saw the Swift apps as the best way to bring customers on board using the Snapchat, WhatsApp, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. But then the other big hook was the fact that we are on this knife's edge now in terms of persons looking at content and wanting to consume more and more content.
Like the Top Form podcast.
There you go.
And World Music Views.
There you go. Right? But at the same time, we knew that just based on just looking at the data traffic coming through, YouTube was the key. So we created some plans which included YouTube in terms of people consuming that kind of content. And that looked like it was the real hook. And so many more customers came on board. To the point that I'll say to you, I have somewhere in the region of 1.25 million consumers. At least 65% of them are now actively using data. A year ago, this was probably about 35%.
Wow.
So Jamaica is slowly but surely. It's a dangerous thing because obviously anything people read on the internet now they believe is the truth, right?
That's where the information come from.
Information overload now at this point, because I mean you can't even control that anymore because people are just forwarding, sending stuff they don't know if it's true. But it's one of the things that you have to deal with as a nation as people consume more and more data. You have to be able to go out and stop the misinformation quite quickly so that it doesn't lead people astray.
So people are consuming data fast on the 4G or LTE Advanced. What does it look like on the 5G, which is already in some parts of the world?
Yeah.
And should we expect 5G soon, and what do you think it would look like?
I think 5G is revolutionary because I mean you're talking about bringing down like a gigabyte of data per second. I mean that is like unbelievable speeds. Now, the thing with 5G, we haven't proliferated what the standard would be for Jamaica in any event. So for us as a company, we aren't necessarily immediately thinking of embarking on it. One of the things that you need to know is that for us to deploy 5G in a country like Jamaica or any Caribbean market, you're going to need 4 to 5 times the amount of towers that you see currently existing right now for just regular mobile. Because the higher the frequencies you go, right, what is happening is the footprint of 5G is much shorter, right? It's not like, let's say, on 3G, you have maybe about up to a mile or so away from the tower or 2 miles away from the tower. 5G is really concentrated in terms of its footprint. So it's hard to penetrate indoors through concrete, all the construct of our buildings, all that stuff. So you're going to have those challenges.
So where are you going to put them? Where are you going to put them if it's hard to go inside?
No, the thing is you need a lot more. That would have been the point in order to support that. I think for us as a country, we have to make our own decisions as to what we do. I think there is room for us to bring government to the table. We have to bring the regulators, the OUR, the spectrum management, all the operators. And very importantly, I think academia is a very important thing to bring into, like the universities. Because I think we have to put our own studies to understand whether or not 5G is good for us or 5G is bad for us. There's so much things out there, so much misinformation. The biggest one right now is that 5G caused COVID. Really and truly, COVID is in over 160 countries across the globe. Only 20 countries have 5G. You understand what I mean? So it just couldn't be responsible for it. So it's about that kind of misinformation and just making sure that people understand what are the dangers, how do you manage it, how does the technology develop as it goes on. Because it's still in its infancy. Even though countries like South Korea, China, the UK, and even some parts of the US, and even in the US, it's not necessarily true 5G, right? It's like when the US started promoting 4G, they were actually promoting
3G advanced.
3G advanced, you understand what I mean? So the 5G they're promoting not necessarily the same, you know? So we have to have a whole discussion about it and just see what's best for our nation. Right now, companies like ourselves, we have just unloaded a whole lot of money in terms of investment in LTE Advanced over the past 2 years. And the fact is, we still have maybe about 100 more towers to put in to even continuously improve the coverage, especially since everything has increased. Because I mean, I would tell you, mobile data since COVID has increased past the 275 over 30%. You know, it's just been incredibly amount of data usage that people
Does that increase in usage affect the bandwidth, how much data we get at home?
I think it will, and I'm saying from the perspective of, because we're very content driven. I mean, two of the highest things that are really big buckets of data for the country are Netflix and YouTube. No, I mean, those are two highest buckets. I will say to you, before COVID, we cash for Netflix here on island, and the cash was at 60%. 4 to 5 days after COVID, the cash was at 100%.
For those who don't know, what does the cache mean?
Caching means that you have a local copy of Netflix, so that, for instance, you're not always going off island to download it from the States. So it's a license agreement that I have with Netflix themselves, who have it on island, so that, for instance, it's shorter latency, etc., and all that stuff. We've had to, and we're in the process of installing a brand new Netflix server in addition to that, in order to do that. And what I will say to you, I mean, just even doing that itself will free up a ton load of bandwidth. The other thing that you must understand is that just globally, this is not a Jamaica problem. Every single network across the globe felt this problem. So much so that the European Union went to Netflix and to YouTube to ask them to reduce their video quality.
I heard about that.
Right? Because if they kept the video quality at the 4K and 8K and all that stuff that they were pushing out, it could literally have crashed a number of networks globally. So they made those changes in Europe, they made those changes in North America and Latin America and the Caribbean, and we benefited from some of that as well. But at the same time, that doesn't say, I mean, we're continuing to add additional bandwidth. I mean, we added about 20 gigs. We have another 100 gigs that we're adding by the end of May to even improve and boost the capacity. But we are using data like going out of style, because, and the thing is, the kind of data that people are using now, it's a lot of video-based stuff. Kids are at home, Zoom classes, video classes. You're at home, Netflixing and chilling, right?
I'm working.
Right? But I mean, just a lot of content. And I mean, kids, they're going to live on YouTube, right? Live on them cartoons, live on all these things. Yeah. So it's a lot more content. And believe me, people are, linear TV, it's not dead because people are still watching a lot of TV. But how they consume TV is changing. Lots more on demand, lots more things, and a lot more different flavors. So, I mean, they're doing Hulu, they're doing Netflix, they're doing Voodoo, they're doing all of these various things.
So have we, in the same light of you investing in 4G and creating these new investments, and people are building businesses on top of the 4G platform. Are we outgrowing 4G as quickly as you're putting it in? We're outgrowing 4G?
I don't think so. I think there is so many years left on that in terms of LTE Advanced where we're at right now. But I mean, the question will come down.
How many years you see us going with that?
I'd say from my economies of scale perspective, I think maybe another 3 to 4 years. That's my view. I mean, I'm not saying that I'm speaking on behalf of the business in terms of what the business will do, but I see that lifespan because there's even more speed you can get out of things. Because I mean, at high, sometimes you can get on LTE Advanced speed downloads of maybe 120 megs per second. You know, so I mean, it is that fast at times. You know. So we're working just to make sure that we position the business in the right way, so we take advantage of these opportunities. What is key for us though is the world has now been on for the past month and a half the largest digital trading program ever done in the history of the world.
Everybody one time
is adopting digital, and I think one of the key things that we're learning out of this is that we have to now understand our customer, our clientele, even more. Because the reality is, brick and mortar, in terms of all of these stores, all of these shops, slowly but surely becoming actually relevant in these times. You know, I expect some things will go back to normality after, but what people have to do now is seek the opportunities in this time in terms of looking at where there is friction for the customer, right? And the biggest friction is, how do I get this thing to my yard? And solve that problem for the consumer in any sort of way. And we're talking about food delivery is the one that comes quickly to mind because, I mean, you look at that. KFC nearly crashed 7 Crave the other day. You understand what I mean? But food delivery is one. Supermarket delivery, groceries, all these things. We have problems because of the fact that hospitality industry shut down, right? Farmers have crops in field. How do you solve that distribution problem for small farmers out there in terms of bringing it to the actual consumers themselves? So it's about how we solve a lot of those problems, okay? All of the carnival postponed, all of these things happening, shows, live shows, clubs, all these things. How do we create relevance for the cultural industries, you know, in this time in terms of making sure that they can continue to earn? How do we put them on the global stage in terms of our artists, in terms of making sure that, for instance, we solve a need out there because we know people want to see them, right? How do we package something in a unique way, totally Jamaican wrapping, to make sure that, for instance, people are able to consume it? And I'm not talking about free because there is value in our culture. There's value in what we're able to push out there. And we're talking about not only in the music industry, we're talking about even the creative in terms of whether dance or even drama. You know, there's just so much that we have to package out there.
How do you see a post-COVID reality for the music industry in particular?
I think the comeback will be quite. It will be slow at first because a lot of or especially the patronage of ours is tourist based. If you understand what I mean. But I think it will come back fast. But at the same time, even during this time, there's still a lot of our entertainers earning, right? And they're earning from the perspective that streaming has gone up, right? Streaming has gone up in a big way. So those persons who have their catalogs in a meaningful way on the various platforms themselves continue to earn during this period. The key thing is you have to continue to make sure that there is a fan connection or consumer connection, right? And some have done work quite well in terms of using social media and various channels to reach them rather than just organic growth. But at the same time, you have to continue to foster and push that. Post-COVID, I think we may have a slowdown in terms of closed venues. Open air venues, you'll probably people will more.
Because they don't have to be close to the
They don't have
person.
to be as close. And
Plus, we have a culture. Dancehall is a culture. When you go in the dance, you find a corner.
there you go.
And jam off. Yeah.
Everybody find the dance, correct? And that is that. So I mean, those things I think will come back because people actually really miss it. I mean, you know that, for instance, when you lose a thing, you know, you can't believe how much you really miss it. I think what will happen in a lot of instances, people will try to do a lot more of these kind of connections. I mean, there's so many opportunities for us in this time to plan for the time out of COVID. And even when I say that post-COVID, how things would happen, there is not enough planning being done right now for after COVID. And I think that's something that we need to wrap. Everybody is just wrapping themselves up in depression. Woe is me, and not making money. But not trying to do the stuff like, for instance, going to the production house to ensure that, for instance, the catalog and content continues to be renewed. They need to do that kind of work. Look at how they can bring various parties to the table. I mean, let's talk about, like, for instance, our protege who just got his Atlantic kind of deal in terms of that kind of stuff. He's been able to still RCA, right? He's been able to continue to keep those connections in terms of with various people. So it's about using this time. I mean, like, even right now, I would long to see us say, okay, fine, let's put up. We've always had these reggae seminars, etc. Let's put up a virtual thing for the industry just to make sure that people understand it. Let's use the time right now to invest in how do you get your content from the early stage, embryonic stage, down to vinyl or down to digital. Those kind of courses, so that, for instance, people understand what to do in simple formats and put those kind of programs. The creative industries can make so much for this country, but we have to make the investment in order to make sure that we make each other better. Will the industry step up and lift each other? We see crab in a barrel mentality sometimes, but I mean, you know, we have to do that.
You mentioned some very important points about the music industry, and I'm going to also suggest that you're a leader in the industry, Tina, from the promoter side, but you're a leader in the industry, and it's a good idea to have a virtual conference, because New York is doing that right now. Hip hop is doing that. They're actually having these conferences nightly, different groups having them. There's a thing called Versus with Swiss Beats and Timbaland, where Babyface and Teddy Riley broke the internet with it the other day. Over 4 million people tuning in. Dancehall, the essence of dancehall is clash culture. Mm-hmm. So maybe you could facilitate that through the server. And beyond that, Apple just announced that Apple Music will be in Jamaica for the first time, and 8 other Caribbean countries. Mm-hmm. Have they, like Netflix, reach out to you to do some kind of licensing partnership deal? And do you think it would be necessary to have that kind of a partnership to increase streaming for the local artists?
I think it would be a very good partnership from that perspective. I think what we also have to do as well from our perspective is there needs to be a lot more education done around IP rights in this country, right? This is probably, Kingston City is probably a bootleg city, if you understand what I mean. Nobody buys this kind of stuff anymore, you know. In the Apple space, hopefully people will start to mature it, but I think there's a lot more education that needs to go with it around that. Or people would want to better just consume it just using YouTube, just from that perspective, and that would be a major competing force. We've done partnerships before, music partnerships. We've done partnerships with Deezer, where we had a global partnership with Deezer. That worked well for years. That even when we stepped out of the partnership, there's still a lot of Jamaican consumers still using Deezer in Jamaica as one of their sources.
What was that partnership with Deezer like? Because a lot of people didn't really understand it, because Deezer wasn't the most popular.
It wasn't the most popular, but I think they allowed us the opportunity to market music and market global music. And What you found was that it also made it easier to stand up and listen to what Jamaicans were actually listening to and wanting to find and search for. So they started to adapt and change, us trying to find that content from wherever. So even in Jamaica, it did help a little from that perspective. But just not enough persons wanted to pay for legal music from that perspective. So they would use the free version, but nobody would pay the licensed version, which is where their model is made.
So the YouTube model, Leo Cohen, who is the CEO for YouTube Music, he spoke about how getting the consumer to pay with their eyeballs, that has been YouTube's magical formula. Is there a way, with that culture in mind that you just mentioned, to get Apple Music to appreciate that? And in some territories, especially in Africa, they're charging $2.99 for what they charge $9.99 for. We're a smaller market. We have a less income base rank in the world. Do you think that would be a way that they could go?
I think for us, we suffer from scale and in terms of size. So I think what we have to do is recognize that it's not just Jamaican music. I think we have to embrace the other music forms like around the Caribbean, the soca, the whatever the case may be, and package that all as one huge
Caribbean music
from that perspective. I think on its own, yes, we are forced to be reckoned with the Sean Pauls, the Coffees, everybody who's made it big, Burning Spear, Black Uhuru, all of them, Steel Pulse, everybody. The challenge is we're still just a one small genre, right? I think when you bring the whole everything together, right, then people start to recognize the subtle differences between ska from rocksteady, from reggae.
In the same way hip hop did in the US, because you have several versions of hip hop.
Correct.
Up and down the state.
Because what's happening now is that, for instance, you recognize and you listen to Afrobeats, you say to yourself that, why Afrobeats sound like soca, you know what I mean?
Or reggaeton. Or reggaeton is Dembo from Steely and Clevie.
Exactly.
That's remixed forever.
So it is, I mean, you recognize that we have to come together and not necessarily fight against it. We have to just make sure that we push and drive it forward as an entire industry, because there's just so much that's there that we can capitalize on.
I have this theory that technology is supposed to make poor people get the things that rich people could already afford. So you mentioned S-Crave, crashing, KFC crashing that, bringing things home, which is a lovely concept. How you get it home. What do you see Jamaica, a technology-driven Jamaica, looking like in 5 years?
I think technology-driven Jamaica is one where, for instance, especially where small business, the engine room or the industry, starts to embrace these things and changes from just focusing on a local market to a global market. You can think local but act global. You understand me? And I think that's one of the things that we have to really recognize. And from the perspective of the music industry, there's so many people that have come to record in our country. No Doubt has come. Mick Jagger has come. So many others have come to record here. We have the best beaches. We have the best country, the best scenery. Let's invest in studios across the island where people can just come quietly, start to record their music. We can become a hub for production. You know what I mean? Just invest in equipment, invest in all these things. But at the same time as well, we can also become the kind of creative hub that needs to be there for persons to get that kind of platform for blast off, but we have to also seek partnerships. I think that's one of the things we're a little too insular. You can partner with somebody in North America, you can partner with somebody in Canada. It's all one big pie, right? But it's a means to an end in terms of bringing ourselves to the future. Technology will rapidly change music, will rapidly change entertainment. will rapidly change festivals, because we can do so much in terms of how we look at festivals. And even just now, when you look at what has happened, this big disruption, you said to yourself, my lord, this industry is probably, I worry about it, I don't want to put on an event again, correct? But the fact is, it presents itself with opportunities, because you can do events in a whole new way. Today, they had to cancel, but they had everything online. Yesterday, their proceeds for charity, but they still got people paying online to do all the yoga, all of the cannabis discussions and all that stuff. They got people to do those things, but we have to just evolve and adopt just different and new approaches.
And my last question is, in China they have this app called WeChat that connects the whole system. In Jamaica, they've been trying to push NIDS and all of these one identification system. Do you think that would help Jamaica and eliminate some of our problems?
I think we have so many different ID forms. It's time to standardize. I think there is, be it NIDS, be it whatever that comes out of the pipeline, we still need that, because you really want to make sure that everybody is counted in a nation. Right now, I'll give you one problem. The CARE program, the best program the government has just for COVID. The government is probably estimating that a certain number of 300,000 or such persons are going to be affected, but it's actually more than that. If you have more information on your population, you're planning better, and I think that's where you want to go. From a perspective of digitally making cash, I think that's something that we need to do. We are so far behind countries like China in terms of that. I think we walk around with too much cash. We put ourselves in the space of too much risk. That's why we have so much robberies, We need to develop from that cash-based society to electronic or digital cash kind of thing. And I think that's something that we need to do. Probably 60% of our country is banked. Another 40% is unbanked. But even that 60% who is banked, 20% of them have not used their account in the past 2 years. Right? So it shows that we're just very cash based. So we have to find a way, changing legislation now to make people incentivized to make sure that they do their transactions by the phone. Like, for instance, if you make everybody into both a payee and a payer. So for instance, boy, Donovan, let me $2,000 now. You touch my phone, bam, get that $2,000 just easy like that. Right? You may pay a transaction fee to just pass it, but the fact is, at least it's safe and secure. You have your IDs, maybe thumbprint, whatever behind it in terms of being able to do it. But digital definitely is the way to go.
Final question. I know I said final question just now. What are you working on?
What am I working on? We are working on creating a business for the future. I think what we've seen is that so many things that we've changed totally in terms of how we operate. We're going to see COVID around with us for some time. People think it's just maybe 2-3 months. No, we're going to see COVID for another year or two until they find a vaccine. So we're going to have to adopt new ways of working, new ways of living, and just how we operate. Work from home, people are evaluating brick and mortars, but us as a business, we're looking for life after COVID. We know we have to make some structural adjustments because entire industries have shut down. So and they are our customers, who normally would pay us on a monthly basis, but we're not going to get that payment on a monthly basis. The fact is, we want to create a business that is digital, pushing more and more customers there, electronic top-up, electronic means, and hopefully just by using data as that platform, we can push the country in that direction, giving them the pipeline, the data highway, that they will just take the opportunity and seize it.
Stephen Price, thank you so much. This is the Top Form Podcast, World Music Views. I'm out.